everyone. I'm Nala,
And I'm Faith.
and this is the Sirens Den breakdown theories and things you may have overlooked for the final episode of season 1 of Loki.
So, as always, this is your official spoiler warning.
We were obviously told a while ago by Kevin Feige that Loki is what's going to have the most impact on the MCU moving forward, and this episode definitely got us to see why.
Yeah. And I think it's just kind of proof that like Marvel can keep anything a secret and don't trust actors at all ever when they're interviewed about certain pieces of media that involve Marvel.
This episode was called For All Time, Always, which is a line that they've said multiple times throughout the series, but now it has a completely new meaning. So we first start off with the Marvel logo, and we're getting kind of a flashback, a quote flashback into the MCU. It's just a bunch of quotes from all these different movies in, what is known as the sacred timeline. And it really kind of brings us into kind of the urgency of the matter, because we get right into the Citadel that Loki and Sylvie go to after they've defeated Elias.
Can I just say, I thought that whole section was awesome. Revealing just that swirling light just around that citadel in space. I thought it looked so cool. I did, however, because I love how Marvel takes any opportunity it gets to be self-congratulatory and look at how cool we are. And just I was dying at all of like the famous one-liners from all of their heroes combined with like civil rights activists and philosophers
Yeah,
and
for
just
sure.
like Malala. They
Right, I
had
totally forgot about that. It
Nelson.
wasn't just the
Who this?
Avengers. It was Greta Thunberg.
Yeah, that was the one that killed me. Yeah, that one was cool. I just when they were because they had some Ellen Watts quotes in there, which that I will admit kind of was a little bit more fitting than like I think the combination of like the Captain America is just as great as Malala and Greta Thunberg and Maya Maya Angelou.
I did appreciate though the interpretation of having it like for as a director, like how do you get people to see time and
Yeah.
understand it? And they did a
That
very good job of that by here's the moments we all know, those one-liners and stuff. Here's stuff from out history, and then it wraps around, and then it births and dies, and then here it goes again.
Yeah,
Uh,
like visually and conceptually, I think it was awesome. Love how Marvel just takes any opportunity to be like, we're amazing, and how they just kind of did that there.
Did like I think my favorite part of that opening sequence was the two black holes just like slowly moving towards each other. Ooh, spooky stuff. It kind of reminded me of where Thor went to get to make Stormbreaker. Just this place in basically the middle of nowhere, but it's surrounded by what we will eventually learn is the timeline itself, and that's what you see when you get when you look out of the window. So going into the Citadel, we are greeted by dun 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 Miss Minutes herself. I remember us talking about this a while ago, and we were talking about who's at the end of time. And I know, Faith, I think you talked about Miss Minutes being there. So there she was, and she was so good, so like threatening.
Yeah.
She was
Yeah, just
very, very nefarious.
the way they animated her eyes, I think that's kind of I think what did it. It just made her she just looked a little off. Not like a whole new character design or anything. There was just something not quite right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
while we're on her too, she does give Ravonna something to do. I don't know if we're gonna get to that, but like that's why Ravonna
Yeah,
leaves.
yeah.
We'll probably
Yeah,
get
she
Mhm.
like
to go snuff
the
out free will. I
he
think is what because
he
she's like,
he who remain had one more trick up his sleeve, and we're gonna see that with whatever she gave Ravonna. And also just Tara Strong is one of the best actresses of our time. We all know this. So of course she
Facts.
delivered in just bringing the creep factor in that whole moment.
Oh yeah.
her range as a voice actress is greater than so many other actors like full beat like repertoire,
Oh
and she
Mhm.
yeah.
can just do it with her voice.
Agreed. But Miss Minutes gives us a whole expo dump on where they are. They are in fact in the Citadel, and are on their way to see He Who Remains.
I loved Miss Minutes, and now it makes sense why she
Mhm.
was first billed, because she's the as villain as they could tell us,
Mhm.
right? And that's why she was first billed. Because yes,
Yeah.
she's the villain, but we can't tell you who the real villain is. So people like us from film school that know how to read credits and the meaning of credits in order know
Mhm.
that she had something a lot bigger than just the helpful AI.
The two things I'm thinking is either Miss Minutes is part of He Who Remains King's like just like final gambit to prevent the other kings from wreaking havoc. And that this is kind of because this is the one last thing that because he didn't tell either of the guys that or the guys being the Lokis
The
um
guys, the
that
bros.
yeah that about Ravonna or whatever it is he sent Miss Minutes to give her. There's a very specific dialogue there being he thinks this is a little bit more important for you to have.
Oof.
So I'm thinking either it's she's gonna be kind of enacting his final will, and like maybe he left her clues or something to kind of follow. Um, Alternatively, maybe Miss Minutes and some time shenanigan type of things is just the result of a different king. Because when Loki got back to the TVA, it was immediately ruled by a different king. Maybe that king has been playing its cards and was depending on blah 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 blah. Um, and Miss Minutes, yeah, and that Miss Minutes was seeing that happened. He was the virus in the TVA to get the King the Conqueror to conquer it. A Trojan horse in a minute body. I'm wondering if like a timeline branch isn't so much they can have all those different variations. It's so much more a branch that will butterfly effect into Evil King. I love and also I think we're gonna get a bunch of different kind of kinged personalities. I think this king has just, lost it for being alone for a millennia, trying to prevent his evil selves from spawning. I like that last time we were talking about it's either he who remains or king, and we have no idea which one. Like it could be either, and it's both. It's like so.
Mhm.
I feel like well, we're smart. We're smart.
All right, we're getting
Okay.
past
Yeah.
Miss Minutes and
hmm
her ultimatum. What do you think about that, Nala?
I thought it was her ultimatum was interesting because it was so like bizarre. In terms of like, how is this going to work? If she says that Loki can have everything that he wants, he can rule whatever he wants, and Sylvie can have a lifetime of happy memories, how would that work? Because that's just not what their stories are. And I think that they've figured that out by the time they get there.
Just the idea that maybe that red line point that's the Kang point. That's what that is supposed to symbolize. That whatever the Nexus event is, it's the event that would
Ah.
butterfly effect into a evil Kang. Immortus, and he was wearing the Immortus costume, by the way.
hmm So we get past Miss Minutes. We go deeper and deeper into this citadel, just made out of black and like obsidian rock with gold snaking through it. It was really awesome. Like the visuals are again top notch in this show.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we're walking through and we get we're seeing statues of what seems to be the three timekeepers and a fourth statue on the ground that's been destroyed. And this is when we meet He Who Remains, Jonathan Majors' character, who makes an appearance in Loki. And for those who don't know, he is slated to play King the Conqueror in Quantumania. That is not what he is credited as in Loki. So we're probably going to be getting more than one version of this character in the future.
Yeah. So I'm so happy. And I think and we'll kind of get into like more of the specifics of like how they, because one of the things I really liked was how last episode and last time we were kind of going back and forth of like, oh God, it's either going to be Kang or it's going to be a He Who Remains. It's going to be one of those two. We have no idea which one, but it's got to be one of those two, and it's both. Kind of in how they combined the characters of Lady Loki and Enchantress to get Sylvie. They combined Kang and He Who Remains, and the way and at first I think they justified it really well too. Which we'll get into kind of the deal that he and why in a minute. But yeah, I think the way Jonathan Majors plays him is, I think, really has a lot of personality to it. One thing for if you've read any comics that has King the Conqueror in it is like he's one of those characters that like everything he's his powers and his like concept is really cool, but he has no personality ever. So it was cool to kind of just see this kind of interpretation of him. And I think it was a brilliant performance on Jonathan Majors' part. I think because once you know the history of this particular He Who Remains, it kind of his off aspects of him make a lot of sense.
I personally loved the way he portrayed this rendition of the character. He was so quirky. I was cracking up at many points during his whole, like, he really stole the scenes he was in. But like, yeah, you can tell that there is still something beneath the surface. Like what he gave us, I felt was a facade. And you know, he knows what to say to be, you know, inconspicuous.
Yeah. He says that he has laid all his cards on the table a little bit later on when he says that he's totally truthful, nothing left to hide. But we know that's not true, or might not be true, because one of the things that we do see a little bit later on is back with Ravonna. She is trying to collect files. Miss Minutes comes to her and she's like, sorry, that took so long. I had something to take care of. Which tells us that there's only one singular Miss Minutes who kind of bounces back and forth between all these places. So that's cool. But secondly, Ravonna's like, well, these are not the files or the information I asked for. And then Miss Minutes replies in a very interesting reply of the guy in charge thinks that these will be more useful and better for you. So this guy has another plan going. He has another currently, and Ravonna is the one acting it out. I think it's just some like, okay, there because his goal is to prevent the other versions of himself from taking over. If he knows that this is only going to end in one of two ways, and that one of those ways is that they don't believe him and kill him, and all this starts to happen again. I think this is a contingency plan. This is in case I die and other me's spawn, I have this happening to kind of put a curb in that. What that is, who knows?
Well, we also have B-15 going to the alternate universe where she is and is still a principal.
Yeah. Did you guys notice that the year she was a principal there in whatever that was, that was snap year. So I wonder.
Snap year. Hey now. So would she have been snapped or would she have survived the snap?
Or did
What
the
different-
TVA get like a billion people all at once because it's a 50-50 chance, right? You either snapped or you're not. So for every person, there'd be a double of you. Everybody gets an instant double.
Kill your double. Did you guys ever listen to Welcome to Night Vale?
Yes.
That.
This is true. Kill your double.
But
So that's interesting that it was snappier. I'm pretty
yeah,
sure that's
maybe.
going to come into because now post snap, that's again how it's going to be mentioned in everything moving forward.
Can you imagine? I think that might. I feel like that's probably going to be what her nexus was that she was supposed to snap and didn't.
Oh,
Um,
interesting.
which if that is the
Ooh.
case and she finds that out, that's going to be some really interesting character motivation.
I can see
There's
it.
I would like to see a duo as our last villain because we just had the singular villain Thanos, right?
hmm
So it would be nice to see them like have a power share this time, like a king and queen kind of a thing that
yeah.
are trying to rule all of time, and we have to stop them.
Her character arc might just be because her thing was she wanted to continue the TVA that because she said what if it means something else like we don't know what it has to mean something there has to be something else going on here that we should think about the importance of this so she might be going from a like we must uphold the TVA to burn everything about it. I'm with the guys they were trying to stop now. And finding out that like your Nexus event was that you were just supposed to vaporize and then didn't. Um, I could see that turning you in that direction.
Well, I guess before we get too far into the rest of the episode, just pull the bandage off. Spoiler, putting it out there. Loki is coming back for season 2. So a lot of these characters are obviously not done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I am
So
so
whether we
excited.
see Ravonna I mean, she's probably going to be in more of Loki, but there's a chance that she could show up in Quantumania.
Yeah, this episode felt like a giant post-credit scene. Like it
Yeah,
felt like what we would get in 5 minutes at the end of an Avengers movie, but we get 45 minutes of it in Loki.
which I was okay with.
I'm not complaining. I learned a lot, and the
Mm-hmm.
fact that they dropped their big bad so early in a TV show just shows the confidence they're having. And like if you miss it, it's okay because he's just gonna show up as a variant in a different one, and you didn't really need to see Loki. You'll still understand. Oh yeah, this is our big bad. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they count on pop culture lexicon and shows like ours to talk about it so that everyone knows by word of mouth. Oh yeah, this is our new big bad. It's Kang the
Yeah,
Conqueror, also known as what did you say earlier?
Immortus.
Immortus. They might run with Immortus, I feel like. That feels more appropriate. I think that's why he's like, some have called me King the Conqueror, some, because he could even say Ratut or whatever his name was as an
Mm-hmm.
Egyptian king. Some have called me, but in the end, I am Immortus. You know, I can see that.
I'm pretty. I think we're going to be seeing the most that we see of Kang in a lot of these, except for Quantumania, is kind of be how we saw Thanos for a while, which is just he's evil at the beginning and maybe the end of the
But
movie and
see,
says
they
something
doing
sweet.
this, I feel like they're expecting that. Like, why not drop him in Spider Man? That's what causes, because, like, what's his name? Doc Ock is confirmed, and so is.
Mm-hmm.
So who brought them there? You know,
That's true.
A Kang can bring him there. So he could be the one puppeteering the movies, and we just never get to him. We have to defeat the Sinister Six or whatever this time, but we're not going to get to Kang in this movie. And so that way he's pulling, unlike Thanos, because that's another complaint Marvel's been getting. Because why aren't the Avengers helping? And, you know, like that's why they started doing more team ups. And like,
Mm-hmm.
I think they're trying to break formula to catch us off guard and still be engaging, and they have the money to do it. And I think as they proved with the last, like with WandaVision and Loki here, that they'll take chances now. They don't care. They'll
Yeah.
gamble on
I
it.
mean, I agree with that, but also I'm kind of in the because I'm really excited for Kang and all the different variations we're gonna do on them, but that's also a trick that has the potential to get real old if they're not careful about it. And I think they know that because I think because there's only so many times that they can be like, and Kang is here too. Um,
Oh well, all right. It's not what are the movies? It's not going to be in Shang-Chi, right?
mhm. They're not gonna be Shang-Chi.
But
I
it's
could
definitely
see like
Ant-Man. and it's
Definitely Ant-Man.
and it's
I could see
possible.
Multiverse of Madness.
Yeah, now
I
it's
could see.
probably the bad guy in Doctor Strange, right? Might
Hmm.
be Wanda for a bit, but because Wanda, we don't. They might just pull a Marvel move and go, "She's fine now. Don't worry about it," and like moving on. She had 8 months of rehab. Look at, she's fine. Or it's like, I don't know. I like OP Crazy Wanda, and she could be our villain.
Because I thought Nightmare was going to be in Multiverse of Madness.
I heard that too. Nightmare.
Because I think what it's going to be is I think he's going to be in it, but I think he's going to be in it to the same extent as Thanos was in Guardians of the Galaxy. Like has a hand in the events a little bit, but is mainly there to show off this guy's a threat. But I don't think we're going to get a lot of him. But I do think we're going to get some. Just I don't think, like, if nothing else, they might like see him at the end, and it might be like a before he skedaddles. But I am, however, curious for when we're going to see Agatha again.
I was hoping she'd show up.
So this brings us back around to Kang, he who remains. He's led Sylvie and Loki to his study. They have tried to kill him countless amounts of times, but he always seems to teleport away from them. And it's discovered that he does have a temp pad that he's using to teleport, but he keeps telling them, how do I know what locations I'm going to need? I know this because I know everything. And I just want to point out this. This has nothing to do with like the actual story. I thought it's hilarious that the big giant round window behind him just had two smaller windows, round windows up top to make our wonderful Mickey Mouse logo that absolutely decimates everything in its path. Mickey rules all of time. They're going to recast Kang with Mickey. But I love this sequence. I love that, all the colors that we're playing, the playing off of everyone, the atmosphere. It kind of reminded me of the Sanctorum from Doctor Strange. So it's like I can definitely see how this is going to bleed into the next phase of Marvel, starting with Doctor Strange.
So I really, because making Kang he who remains, I was for a little bit like, how are they gonna justify this? What's going on here? And I think they did that beautifully with just the idea that he did all this to prevent any of his other selves who are way worse than him and just bloodthirsty and off. But because remember the little propaganda Miss Minutes video we got at the beginning, she talks about how way back in the beginning there was a diverse war. We find out that was true, but it fought with Kang. It was good, the bad, and the Kang. And all of them were Kang. The Kang, the Kang, and the Kang. And that this was how they just didn't want to be the specifics about what they were preventing, because I don't know, this worked better. I can suspend disbelief enough that I don't need too much of a justification behind that decision. But yeah. And so now we know that there's going to be a bunch of Kang the Conquerors that are going to pop their heads up in the Marvel universe.
I'm excited. Again, I was wondering if they would make it Kang, because I was seeing if they're going to wait until Quantumania to introduce him. But the casting announcement has come before production has even begun on Quantumania. So I think it's smart that they introduced him in Loki, and they introduced him as this specific version of Kang, because it was very Mandarin-esque, where it's like, you build up this big bad guy, and then in the end it's like, oh, don't hurt me. But because he's talking about how there are worse versions of him, and obviously what happens to him by the end of or what happens to this version by the end of this episode, we haven't seen the Kang that Marvel has intended us to see yet.
So what I find really interesting about Kang kind of laying it all out on the table and explaining why he's done all this and gone out of his way to make time police and enforce the timeline in this very specific way is so he can prevent other more evil versions of himself from going and wreaking havoc. Miss Minutes propaganda film at the beginning, it talks about the multiversal war, and now we know that that wasn't a lie. They just left out the specifics of who was fighting that war, and it being just a bunch of just evil Kang goons, and that this is the Kang that took all of them out so there can be peace in the galaxy, I guess. What would the timelines, the multiverse, peace in the multiverse as one timeline, peace in wherever the timeline resists. I don't, but peace. He did it for peace. And I think that's really interesting. I think that's a really just clever spin on his character. Uh, and yeah, I think most importantly, though, this means that coming up, we're going to be getting a bunch of different Kangs who maybe aren't going to have this personality. One thing I
That's what
really,
I'm saying.
yeah, one thing
That's
I
what I'm
really like,
excited for.
yeah, one thing I also thought was really interesting about how Jonathan Majors played this character. I think what the creepiest thing about him was how eager he was to die, which that's a hard existence. You can't blame him. Um, but I think it was also what's really brilliant about how they tied Kang and He Who Remains in this is how, because Loki in Norse mythology and in the comics is all about this kind of continuous cycle. Loki causes Ragnarok. Asgard is destroyed. It is renews again, and so everything repeats. That's kind of what they did with Kang's character here. I think that's a cool detail and a good, cool way to tie him and Loki together. Um,
I love how genuinely excited he got when we crossed the time threshold when he didn't know what was gonna happen.
yeah.
We cross his threshold and he gets super excited and he's like, I lied to you, but I'm super stoked. 10 seconds ago, like we crossed this threshold and now I don't know what's gonna happen. And he just like picks
Mhm.
up an object and drops it just to see it fall. Like I
hmm
don't know.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how Jonathan Majors plays these different Kangs that we're going to be,
Oh yeah.
and also how we're going to be seeing them. We know that he's going to be kind of the next Marvel big bad, um, and I can't wait to see where he kind of pops his head up. I don't think they're going to be pulling that card every time because that has the potential to get real old real quick if they do it wrong. But I I I trust their judgment right now, to throw them in cool places that we don't expect, and make a really interesting story coming forward.
I am as well. So I've been thinking of how the MCU is going to play out now. Yes, I'm so stoked for Jonathan Majors as Kang, especially since we got to see this almost chill kind of fun side of Kang, and we know that he's the best, and even he wasn't that great.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I think it's great that they introduced him in Loki because we're going to get him in Loki, maybe in the second season of Loki, again in Quantumania. And this is also a great setup for Young Avengers because in their story, the Avengers are incapacitated and they take up the mantle against Kang. So, what I've been wondering, honestly, is we're not having that for the rest of Phase 4. Phase 4 ends with Fantastic Four. But I'm wondering if Phase 5 is going to have, like Phase 4 and 5, if they're going to have any team up movies a la Avengers.
Thor is in Guardians and Guardians are in Thor.
Well, yeah, no, I know. So there's that. But then is there going to be something else? Is there going to be another thing of like the Avengers movies? Or is it are they going to do a new formula? So what I'm thinking is I think they might finish off Kang. Kang is going to carry us through Phase 4 and Young Avengers is probably going to be what kicks off Phase 5 because as soon as we introduce Fantastic Four, we're going to have to introduce Galactus, which I think is where the future of the MCU is heading.
You're going Galactus. Oh,
Ooh.
you're going big time.
I am.
That would be an amazing villain to see on the silver screen. So I hope you're right.
But I mean, for now, I'm excited with Kang and what we're going to get from him.
I really liked the ultimatum that they were given and kind of how that separated them. And I like how that separated them. So I like how Sylvie did not buy a single word that this guy is saying, which why would she? She spent an existence longer than Loki running from these guys and kind of this horror hell that he created for her. So I she has every right to be like, no, this guy's lying. I so but I like how Loki took it seriously. And I think this is kind of where we can see where Loki's grown a little bit. I think he took it serious not out of the desire to rule, but because earlier in not the Loki show, but in Loki as a character in these movies, there's a scene he had with his mother, Frigga, where she said essentially that he's so good at getting insight and seeing the truth of people and everyone but himself. Um, so I think the fact that he heard that and believed that, I think, was kind of a testament to that. Loki is a very I think we underestimate how wise of a character this guy is. We talked earlier about how his instinct is survival. So I think the fact that he could kind of see that, oh, that is a threat that we should take seriously outside of my potential desire to rule, which I did believe that. I think I just Tom Hiddleston, credit to him as an actor, just how genuinely freaked he seemed uh, was I think really just a good indication of how this Loki has grown and given the right opportunity, Loki's a really heroic guy, kind of. He or at least he doesn't want chaos and destruction.
I mean, you need to have a universe to rule.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's like one of those arguments, like when Star-Lord, like when they're like Rocket's yelling at him, like, "Why are you trying to save the universe anyways?" Because I'm the asshole that lives in it, you know?
Yeah.
Like it's a different thing when all of existence is on the line. Everybody, like, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
we'll come together for this one.
But I think more than that, there's a lot of I think a lot of credit to Loki where I think also think back to when there was that time he did rule Asgard and he didn't take the opportunity to like plunge it into chaos. It was peaceful times where he threw plays about himself.
He
That
just sat around in a bathrobe and ate
and just
nuts and
sat around in a
grapes.
bathroom like but he when given the chance to rule, he didn't he abused it, but not in a I'm gonna conquer everything in my power. And he was kind of content where he was and content with that. I don't think he wants necessarily chaos and destruction. And I think while there's a little bit of I'm the idiot who lives in that universe, not lately. And not to mention I think it just kind of is it speaks to his kind of there is a part of him that does see the greater good in things and understands that there's some evils that there's evil out there that you should prevent. I think it did a really good job of showing that Loki can be on the side of good, and can actively choose to make those choices.
It does. And this was definitely something that I was excited to see. Basically, the re-character development of Loki. He's developed in a different way than he has throughout the MCU, but it does show the genuine what is at Loki's core, which is like, yeah, deep down, he does care. And he doesn't want to be alone.
That goes back to what Sif was saying, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
you'll always be
And
alone.
yeah, and it goes, yeah, that's why his bad memory time loop prison was Sif telling him that he was going to be alone always, because that was that is his worst fear. And it definitely plays into the rest of this episode with him, as soon as they cross the threshold of everything he who remains knows is going to happens, he stops Sylvie from killing him because he knows that whatever is going to happen is going to be a mess, and it's going to be a mess that might end up it's going to make life difficult for a lot of people. And we'll find that out, we'll find that out more when he gets back to the TVA after after Sylvie tells him that, you know, he tries to reason with her and tells her that they are the same in the way that they think and in their motivations for why they do things. And she tells him at the end, before sending him into the portal back to the TVA and killing He Who Remains, is that they're not the same. Which to me was very interesting because, again, it just sheds more light on the whole Sylvie's actually enchantress theory. She's said many, many times that she does not, you know, she doesn't want to be called a Loki. And, you know, they're not the same. And they are constantly, she talks about how different they are. And I think it's because they are actually different. And maybe we've talked about this before, but maybe her Nexus event is the fact that she was created as Enchantress. And that maybe wasn't supposed to happen.
I think what it's going to be is I think how it's going to play out. I think because I do think Loki and Sylvie, or I think Sylvie and Loki are variants of the same being. Like I do think that is true. That Sylvie is technically a Loki, but I think what's going to make her different and what makes her Enchantress is that she was yoinked from that when she was a child and has spent the majority of her life away from that. Everything she knew and loved was pruned. So I think in that sense, she had a very different life than Loki did. She grew up very differently and she probably learned to value things differently. And I think ultimately that's what forged her into a different person. And that's what makes them different. Is just that she has no memory as her life as a Loki. So why would she want to be referred to as the thing that the time police want to destroy?
You know what? Good point. Good point. She definitely didn't grow up as the goddess of mischief because she just grew up on the run.
Yeah. She had to figure everything out on her own. She really doesn't have too many memories of her past life before that. She's about as different from Loki as you can get. Loki grew up in the lap of luxury as son of the king and lost it due to his own greed and jealousy. I also love that they kissed. I love that there's a lot of people I think leading up to is like, I don't see how it's romantic, and I'd be like, are we watching the same thing?
I think everyone would. I think we're all enamored with ourselves in some way or another.
You would hope you find yourself attractive enough that you would be like, yeah, if it was like a different version of me, totally. Or the personality that you'd be attracted to is someone similar to yourself, right?
So that finally brings us to our end of the episode. Sylvie pushes Loki through the portal, ends up killing Kang. He tells her that he's going to see her again soon, which is our indication that we're going to be getting more of this character, obviously. And we see behind his dying body, out looking onto the timeline, that it starts to branch. And then the branches start to branch, and then those branches start to branch, and it becomes this whole essentially tree of time.
I love that it just looked like a galaxy. That was the coolest, I think, way they could have visualized it. Yeah, I was super impressed with that. I thought that was beautiful. And I'm real excited to. I mean, just this show put a lot of effort into itself visually. And I think one of the hardest things that challenges they had was, how do you visualize time itself? Like, how do you, if you're looking at time, what does that look like? And I think that they did it in a really cool way. I think one that looks visually cool media wise, but I think also makes sense, and has just some imagery that we as dumb humans can be like, oh, that looks awesome.
It made me like that first realization in like Men in Black when they pulled back and it was like we were in a marble.
I like it. It took us back to the TVA, and we saw a mirror of that shot of, you know, what happened when Sylvie blew up the timeline, you know, back in the office headquarters and everyone's panicking. But now it's that 1,000 times worse. And everyone is freaking out, running all over the place, not sure what to do. And Mobius and Hunter B-15 are running around trying to figure out what's happening, how to stop it, what's going on. Loki comes up telling them that it's no use, and they don't seem like really reactive to his presence. they don't know who he is. And he is not in the TVA that he knows. He is, in fact, in another timeline's TVA. And they have no idea who he is.
He's in the analyst clothing, and they're like, "What division are you from? Where do you work?" Do you think those are the TVA goon equivalent questions of if someone has a concussion? When you're like, "What day is it? What's your name? What were you doing?" But that also means that Loki's not in a great position to be starting out season 2 with. He's literally in the lion's den. We see that he's freaked out by this guy because he's seen how powerful the good version of that is. The next episode, season 2, the next time we see Loki is probably going to be him busting out of this version of the TVA. I almost wonder if he's going to run into possibly Renslayer, and they might, weirdly enough, team up to get out of whatever this is.
And we also know it's different because in Loki's TVA, there are 3 timekeepers. In this TVA, it is just a statue of Kang. And we know that this version of Kang, to have a statue this big dedicated to only him is a more powerful conqueror.
I do have one last Miss Minutes theory. I almost wonder, because this Kang kind of talks about how he was doing all this to prevent another version of himself from coming in and taking over. But what if that other version of himself was already out there kind of plotting in the sidelines, and Miss Minutes was just kind of his virus within the TVA, and that whatever he's having Renslayer do or is about to do, that's how he maybe that's how this Kang was able to take over the TVA so quickly. Was he was just trying to get rid of the guy on top so he could slide in. And that would be a good way to tie Ravonna into Kang the Conqueror.
Dun dun dun. Final thoughts on this show altogether. It was really awesome. I'm so excited for season 2. I'm so excited with, these new concepts and new characters we've gotten through Loki. I'm just excited to see them more. Loki's definitely the one constant in the MCU, and it seems like he is continuing to be that way. Tom Hiddleston said that if he could play Loki forever, he would. So I think we've got a lot more fun content to look forward to.
Yeah, I'm pretty pumped to see this version of Loki continue in the MCU. He's gone through way more character growth than the Loki we ever knew. And I'm just really excited to see what they have planned for his character now. I don't think we're going to be seeing Loki again until season 2. Because Marvel is, especially because they chose to end Loki on the Loki will end it or come back in season 2 as opposed to an end credit scene. If that was just a lie, and I think that'd be pretty pointless. Of
well, I think he's coming back in Ragnarok, right? He's gonna have time. I don't think he's gonna have too big of roles, but a tiny one at least.
Yeah, I think we'll definitely be seeing Loki again in the cinema side of things. I don't think we're going to be getting him in Multiverse of Madness, or any of the upcoming movies.
See, all he has to do in Ragnarok too is show up, and then Thor goes, "How'd you survive?" And he just goes, "No one can kill me, brother." And then that's it. He's just back. And then for the casual moviegoer, they'll go, "Yeah, Loki does that," and they don't know his whole little path he's taken. But for the casual, that'd be fine, right?
I mean, I'm honestly really pumped with how it ended. I think it ended on a really good note. I think it was a really solid season. I think I liked Scarlet or WandaVision a little bit more, but that was also just because it was a mini series, so it is a complete story now where Loki is not. This is we still have at least one more season of whatever's going to happen. So I think it's a little too soon to say which of the two shows I like more because one's done and one's still going. But with be it as it may, I think, and also I've been a huge Scarlet Witch fan forever, so I'm a little bit biased.
WandaVision, we did wrap up her story, and her thing was becoming the Scarlet Witch, because throughout this whole time she was just Wanda. So that was like, it was her finally becoming the Scarlet Witch, getting that costume change. And honestly, I was a little disappointed that we didn't get a new costume, a little costume change, especially since, Sylvie teased about making her another costume. But this is stuff I can see happening in season 2. So, as we have come to a close on the Loki show, be sure to tune fuck.
I'm keeping it.
As we
I'm
come
keeping
to
it.
fuck. Okay. As we come to a close on the Loki show, be sure to tune in for our next breakdown episodes for What If.
Woohoo!
Ooh.
Tell us what you thought of the final episode of Loki in the comments. DM us on Twitter or send us an email at sirensdenpodcast@gmail.com.
Thank you to Tyra producer and to Sean Thomas at buzzstudio.com for our theme song.
We'll catch you next time.